Welcome to another episode of SFF 180 Horror. On today's video, a young professional woman in Reykjavik discovers that she's been sleepwalking for miles every night. What is she doing during these hours? And is something more sinister going on? In The Night Guest, that's the book I'm reviewing for you. Hello again, everyone. Thomas here, your host as always, and happy Halloween. Hildur Knútsdóttir is a Reykjavik native who has enjoyed an award-winning writing career since around 2011. Now, her eerie and very stark short novel, The Night Guest, has become her first English language release in a crisp translation by none other than Mary Robinette Kowal. It's a psychological horror tale that may or may not, depending on how readers choose to interpret certain events, also be supernatural. Most readers should be able to polish the book off in one sitting, and it has a strange, abrupt ending that I ultimately found unsatisfying, although, as the considerable amount of reader discussion it has inspired will attest to, your mileage will vary. Regardless of my thoughts overall, this author is an undeniable talent, and someone I hope we hear more from. Hildur is a young professional Reykjavik woman with a serious problem. She's exhausted every day. She goes to bed at a reasonable hour, but when she wakes up, she's as knackered as she was the night before. Dealing with insensitive male doctors isn't doing her much good, but even the one sympathetic young female doctor she sees doesn't seem to be able to get to the root of the problem. Even the friendly neighborhood cats are starting to avoid her. One of Hiltur's friends casually mentions that she should buy one of those little fitness trackers for her wrist and try to get a lot of steps in during the day so that she's properly worn out at night and ready for a deep sleep. This doesn't change anything either. One night, Hildur goes to bed without taking the tracker off. When she wakes up, feeling as awful and unrested as ever, the tracker tells her that during the night she took a lot of steps. Over 47,000 steps. Knútsdóttir's storytelling is absolutely riveting in the way she uses Hildur's narration. Now, though other reviews have called Hildur an unreliable narrator, I think that's only partly true. Hildur is nothing if not extremely aware of her insecurities and anxieties, of her own passivity and inability to climb out of it. She just isn't big on accountability. As she says, "I have always stood firm in the belief that I'm a very negative person. That's a big part of my identity," which says all that we need to know she has no interest in working on herself. Hildur is full of not invalid criticisms of patriarchy and the various ways feminism has succeeded or failed to combat it, but when it comes to her own considerable issues, most of them stem from choices she made to give up personal agency. She's envious of other women she sees as more attractive and successful, but she still chose to have an affair with a married coworker she doesn't even particularly like. And Hildur has stifled her own ambitions in supplication to her emotionally distant family. We learn she had a slightly older sister who died in a drowning incident, after which she capitulated to her parents' expectations and gave up her dream of being an architect, instead going to business school, like her sister. And she unexpectedly encounters her sister's old boyfriend, Mar, and they start seeing each other. If anything could be the perfect metaphor for loss of agency, it'd be sleepwalking. And with the attention Knútsdóttir gives to Hildur's inner monologue and the expert translation work by Kowal, the sense of isolation coupled with a brisk pace makes the story suspenseful and disorienting. As Hildur investigates her activities during her nocturnal wanderings, things begin a rapid downward spiral into something truly sinister. If the way I've described the story up to this point makes it sound pretty awesome, then I guess I've done my job. So then why am I tapping out with a disappointed final rating and a highly conditional recommendation at best? Now, you'll remember how I mentioned the book has a much discussed ending? Well, this now presents me with the problem of discussing it without spoilers. But to put it concisely, of course, I don't think a story always has to be cleanly resolved. Ambiguous endings can be intriguing in that way that inspires you to spend hours theorizing with other readers and finding the hidden pieces of the puzzle. And some readers think The Night Guest does this well. I'm not one of them. Neither was Vanessa Armstrong, who reviewed this book for Reactor, which used to be the Tor.com website. She said that the abrupt end leaves us in a liminal space between knowing and not knowing, to which I will add that there is a distinction between well-executed narrative ambiguity and deliberately withholding information from the reader. I mean, things are established and then ignored. Earlier, I also mentioned that neighborhood cats play a role in the story, so I guess I should drop a content warning right here for animal harm. But we're never clear what exactly the purpose of those acts was, how it relates to what Ethan discovers when she finally traces her nighttime walks to their horrific terminus, right? Exactly what was being acted out. What goal was any of this pursuing? Was there a curse? Possession, a malevolent desire for some kind of revenge or retribution, and for what? The mystery ultimately leaves us as cold as the waters surrounding Iceland, and drowning, not swimming. And there you have it. That's all I got time for this episode of SFF 180 Horror. You guys know the drill. These are reviews. You will not always agree with me, but if you enjoyed watching, please hit that like button, share the video far and wide with all of your SFF and horror reading friends, and above all, please subscribe. That's how the channel grows. You can also support the channel at my TeePublic store, or at my Buy Me a Coffee page, or through leaving like a super like, or whatever it is they're calling them in the comments. Thanks very much for that, but I am no longer promoting the Patreon, which will be shut down early in November. Apple is changing the rules for how they want Patreon to accept payments now, and I feel like that is just a hassle that I don't want to deal with and put my supporters through, so I want to thank everyone who has been part of the Patreon for all these years. It's been a great help in, paying Matt Olson, my wonderfully gifted and talented channel artist, for all the amazing thumbnails and things he does for me. And but as for all the rest of you, yes, thank you so much for being the very best viewers in all of BookTube. And until I see all of you next time, please have a happy, happy Halloween, and be safe, be healthy, and spooky reading.